Is a VER a good investment for you in the future? We're going to find out coming right up. Hey everybody, Zach here with Infernal Tool Technologies, and today we're talking about VERs. What are they? Well, they're a voluntary emission reduction, and basically what it is a carbon credit. You are offsetting carbon somewhere in the world, and so you get a credit for that for 1 ton of carbon that was reduced on this planet. And there is a value for that. You can sell it on an open marketplace, and it's a growing market. It's becoming bigger and bigger every single day. So we're going to delve even deeper into this because I made some videos in the past, and I'm really just learning about this stuff right now, and I hope you're learning along with me. But it's getting deeper and deeper, and I'm realizing that there is a huge market for this. This is voluntary, like I said. It's not like in the past videos, some of the other carbon credits that the countries that have taken place in the Paris Agreement, they have mandatory carbon credits that they have to meet. But right now, these are just voluntary carbon credits that any business or any person can invest into and acquire and sell them on the open marketplace. So first, what I would like to talk about in this video is how do you get a carbon credit? Well, there's a few ways that you have to do it, and you can't just claim that you're emitting less carbon in the air. There has to be a bunch of boxes you have to check, basically, and go through different regulations to get an emission reduction. And so one of the things is that they actually have a few bullet points that you have to hit to get this reduction, and one of them is real. It has to be real. It has to be something that has taken place and somewhere in the world at some point. So if you're producing something and you're producing it more efficiently now than you were before, well, that's a tangible reduction that you did right there. So it was something that actually happened. It isn't just something you're talking about in the future that you're going to be doing. It has to have actually taken place. Another thing that you need to prove is that it's measurable, and it has to be something that you're doing. They have to be able to measure it in some way. They have to spend time at your company or whatever project that you're investing in. A regulatory agency actually has to be able to measure the amount of greenhouse gases that you are not emitting. So that can be difficult in some circumstances, and it could just take a lot of time in some circumstances. I mean, it could be a couple months that people have to be taking this research, or even a year or whatever. They have to actually be able to measure this and prove that you are making a difference. So moving on to the next one is it has to be permanent. So the reduction that you make has to be permanent and not reversible, basically. So it could be not cutting down a bunch of trees in a certain area and building a development, and through that period of time, then it would be pulling more carbon out of the air, because trees pull carbon out of the air, carbon dioxide. So that would be a permanent reduction, is that those trees permanently pulled that out of the air. So that one's not that difficult. I think most people can prove that one, that it was permanent, whatever they did. One that is probably as difficult as measurable, and it's kind of similar to it, is a category called additional. So what additional basically means is that what change that you're making, just because you're making that change and after that change has happened, then you saw a reduction, doesn't actually mean that you're going to qualify for a carbon credit. You actually have to be reducing from the point at which you were creating greenhouse gases. So you can't just add all these greenhouse gases and then have a small reduction. It's not gonna turn into a carbon credit. because they're trying to reduce the emissions, not increase all the emissions. Because if everybody just started pumping out more stuff and showed a little decrease on the emissions, at the end of the day we would have more emissions. So that's something that people have to prove, that the infrastructure that you're putting into your business or into a project isn't just increasing the emissions, but having a small bit that is pulling carbon out of the atmosphere. It's not going to fly. And then the final thing, if in your project or in your business, is that you have to have a third-party verification. So there's a bunch of companies out there that follow certain standards, and you have to have them come in and actually verify that you are actually reducing greenhouse gas emissions in your business or in some part of the world in a project. And the project part of this is really what I'm going to start focusing on now for the rest of the video, because I stumbled upon some information that is just blew my mind, honestly, is that how much money can be made from starting projects in third world countries or underdeveloped nations by just making small little changes to these countries. You can make a dramatic change in the amount of tons of carbon that are getting pulled out of the atmosphere, and in turn that turns into a bunch of money in your pocket, and you're doing good for the planet as well. So we don't want to forget that fact. But yeah, so basically what I did was I looked at a few projects that were going on. So what are some of the stuff that they're doing that actually qualifies as a carbon credit? And one of the projects that I stumbled across was high efficiency cooktops for certain underdeveloped countries. So basically they would cook a lot of their food on open pits with a lot of lumber that they're burning all day long. So basically these countries emit a lot of CO2 from burning all this biomass. And so in giving these people these cooktops, it dramatically reduces the amount of wood they would need to actually cook with, and it dramatically changes the amount of smoke that's generated from cooking over an open pit. So I started looking at the numbers for this as well. So one project that I found was they're getting 8,000 cooktops to some country in Africa, and what it quantified to is a yearly amount of 10,000 tons of carbon is being reduced from the atmosphere. So I then went to go look online and see how much a carbon credit costs, and it turns out that at one point last year they got up to $5.60 per credit. So just think about that for example. Let's just do a simple equation. So 10,000 tons of carbon per year would be, if it was at the $5.60 per ton, is $56,000 per year for putting out 8,000 of these cooktops. And this is generated year over year. So if you're looking, let's look at real estate, for example. You get your monthly rents, and you get passive income from that. And it's been a very lucrative business for people for years, for generations. But just imagine this, how lucrative of a business that this could be. You could go and help these underdeveloped nations actually help develop them quicker than they naturally would be developed. And it would basically be like you're getting a passive income off of it, because you would get these carbon credits, and then you can sell them on the open marketplace. Or you could hold them over time, because since it is an open marketplace, you can hold them and wait for the price to actually increase, and you could be sitting very well, I mean extremely well. I think that the price of these carbon credits are going to shoot through the roof, because I guarantee you that the regulations are going to get harder and stricter. They're not going to let this pass by where you can just go get 8,000 cooktops to a tribe in Africa and start making $56,000 a year off of that. I just doubt that that's going to be a reality for very long. So maybe invest into some of these different projects around the world. I mean, they are making change, and there's a lot of money to be made off of these changes that are happening. I just was blown away when I started looking at this information that you can get this massive amount of money from these. Actually, another one that I looked at was 42,000, almost 43,000 carbon tons of carbon was reduction in a year for a same thing. I think it was in Uganda, or I think it was Uganda. Is they gave these different high efficiency cooktops, which each cooktop per year caused a reduction of 3 to 4 tons of carbon. And so that would mean that they gave away basically 10,000 of these cooktops for you to have that amount for 1 year. So let's think about that. 10,000 cooktops. I mean, they can't be that expensive. They gotta be, I just can't even imagine them being more than $2,000 for a cooktop, and then you have to get them there and have them installed. So let's even just say that it's maybe like $5,000 per cooktop. So that would be $50,000. You would be the ROI on that is just ridiculous. I mean, you'd have that almost paid off in 1 year. In 1 year, you would have that almost paid off, and then you would just have that passive income coming in. And if the price of these carbon credits increase in value, then the sky's the limit with that. Please leave a comment down below and tell me about this. If you know more about this, then please tell me, because am I missing something here? Do I still need to do some more research to find out what's going on? But I just feel like I stumbled across a market that is just insane, the amount of money that you can make. I mean, it's crazy. I still have to do a lot more research to figure out can anybody who owns some like a cabin in the woods, and they actually own some acreage in the woods, can they have a carbon offset because they aren't cutting down the trees on that land? Does that constitute for a reduction? Whereas you could have cut all those trees down for, let's just say, firewood or something. I don't know. Tell me about it. Leave it in the comments down below. Let me know if you have any idea about this, because I just feel like people could start acquiring these carbon credits right now and just stockpiling them, and down the road, 10, 20 years from now, I mean, you could be sitting on a gold mine. I mean, absolute gold mine. From all the information that I've been doing and that I've been figuring out recently, these laws and regulations are not going anywhere. They're going to keep hammering down on this green energy movement, and the Paris Agreement is getting hashed out. That's going to keep going, and if not, then they'll come up with some other agreement to keep it going. And this is just going to become a reality for all of us. I've talked in some videos in the past how I think that once the Paris Agreement really takes effect, which it already pretty much has, I mean, there's the goals for 2030 and for 2050. The governments that participate in these sustainability goals are going to start hammering down on businesses. Big businesses first. They're going to really just crack down on them, and they have been cracking down on them. If you are a big emitter of greenhouse gases, they've been cracking down on you, and you have to have these offsets. So you're purchasing these on the open market already right now. And if you're one of those people, then please put a comment down below and just tell me your experience and how this has been for you. But that's going to trickle down into the smaller businesses. So the smaller businesses that are around, if you're a bakery, let's just say, and you have ovens running all day, you're going to start having to have some carbon offsets. You're going to have to reduce it in some way. You're going to have to figure it out. I'm sure there's going to be a whole market for different equipments and different filters or whatever it may be to help people in reductions. but it's going to become a reality for us. I truly think that it's going to ramp up in the 20s. So in the later part of the 2020s, it's going to start. We're going to start seeing it heavily to meet the 2030 goals. But from 2030 to 2050, I truly believe it's just going to be forced down our throats, where we are going to have to. It's going to be part of a business model. I've talked in videos in the past how it's going to be part of your financial statement for your business. If you want to get any funding, you're going to have a certain goal or outlook on your carbon emissions and how you're going to reduce them, or how you're going to be carbon neutral. All these things are going to have to be put in black and white, just in front of everybody. So you're going to have to start thinking about these things. But before we get too deep into thinking about changing our business and figuring out what do we do with our business right now, let's just take a little peek at this though. These voluntary emission reduction credits that you can sell on the open marketplace. I mean, you could invest in these projects, acquire a bunch of these carbon credits, and use them towards your business. And people are doing it right now. I think it is. I read somewhere that 2,000 of the companies on, I think, the NASDAQ, I'm pretty sure, in America, there's 2,000 companies, I think, on the NASDAQ. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I think only 0.5% of those companies have actually agreed to the carbon neutral goals. And that's what they're doing. They are investing in these projects in underdeveloped nations and taking those carbon credits and using it as reductions on their business, or stockpiling these reductions for the future laws and regulations that are going to be coming down the road. But yeah, only 0.5% of those companies are actually taking part in this. But I already see it. You can see it in the mainstream media. You can see it everywhere that it's becoming a fad to do this, and they're promoting it heavily. So I think that percentage is going to increase. It's going to skyrocket pretty soon. And just imagine, we're at 0.5% of the companies on the NASDAQ that have agreed to the carbon neutrality goals. And in 2020, a carbon credit cost $5.60. Just imagine if we got bumped up to 1% of those companies, 5% of those companies. Do you think that there would be a reflection in the carbon credits? I personally do. I think the more people that jump on board, it's going to be a factor of supply and demand. What did we all learn in Economics 101? Is that everything in the economy is dictated by supply and demand at its core. Then there's government laws and regulations that affect all that stuff. But at its core is supply and demand. So if we have a certain level of supply of carbon credits right now, and the demand increases, the price of those carbon credits are going to increase, because so many more people want them, and so the price has to reflect that. And it's also going to promote people to go out and start these projects. So I truly believe that we're going to see some insane growth in underdeveloped nations over these next 10, 15 years. It's going to be wild to see, because at least for my lifetime, Africa has been in a lot of turmoil, and it hasn't been very developed compared to the rest of the world. So can you just imagine 15 years from now what the whole entirety of Africa is going to look like? I know it's not all of Africa that is underdeveloped, but it's just going to be wild to see a lot of these tribes and nations that aren't used to modern life probably shifting over to modern life so quickly, like we've never seen before. If you look back in history, most of the major nations in the world now kind of followed the same path. We all went through our different ages, and some were rising faster than others, but there was a certain path that most countries took to get to where we are today. But I don't think so with these underdeveloped nations, especially with all these um, mandatory and voluntary incentives. It's going to really just make this go through the roof, like parabolic. I mean, the amount of change that's going to happen in these countries is crazy. So maybe that's something also to think about as well, is not only fund these projects that are going to give you carbon credits, but maybe look into different investments in these countries or areas where a lot of these projects are taking place. Look in the surrounding areas. Is that going to affect a certain city? Is it going to promote a lot of these villages that have been living not very technologically advanced for so long? With us pushing all these advancements on them, is it going to maybe affect a city near them? Are they going to start migrating to bigger cities and leave the land that they lived on? That could be a possibility as well. So maybe some of these cities are going to see a huge boom due to this. So we'll just have to follow that. But yeah, basically, I hope you learned something from this video. I'm learning myself. These are just voluntary credits, so it's just something to think about. Is it something that you want to volunteer for? Do you want to get a hold of some of these credits? After doing some research, I think I definitely do. But tell me, put something down in the comments down below. I'd love to hear from you. Some information that maybe I don't know. Do you have some carbon credits? Have you invested in one of these projects? Are you a business owner that has been slammed with some laws and regulations from your government? Please tell me. I'd love to hear it. And if I brought you any value today, then please hit the like button and think about subscribing to the channel. And I'll catch you guys on the next one. Thanks.